Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another podcast. And this week, this is a very special podcast because our guest this time is not from India and is not Duke from Australia. Making his way all the way from America has joined us, John, aka Carpe the DM.
Hello, hello.
And I think without any delay, Batrabai should start the intro, the rest of the intro for the day. Let's go, Batrabai. Over to you.
Okay. So, we're not going to cut this. Okay. So, right, we're going to talk about D&D today. Okay. India, if I talk about D&D in India, it's not very famous. Okay. But I got to know Dungeons and Dragons, that's what D&D is, not Do Not Disturb. Okay. Dungeons and Dragons is actually a game. Okay. So, I was not aware of it. Okay. Until I joined John's stream for the first time. Okay. He guide me through, how it happens, how do you play it. I'm still kind of confused. I don't know how to play it, but I was in one of the streams, okay? So I remember that part. So I think I tried, man. I tried. So I think I want John to actually tell people about what Dungeons and Dragon is. It's a very interesting game, okay? And it's very popular in the West. When I say in the West, I mean like particularly American countries. And it's kind of like an RPG. You know how people play RPG, like a role-playing game, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah.
So I want like John to specify more upon how it is, because he is a DM or a GM, you can say, a dungeon master who actually guides everyone how to play it, and how the game goes through, how you actually make your moves and how you roll the dice, and there's a lot of stuff. So I want John to just dive in and you take the mic, bro.
Yeah, heck yeah. Mic check. Well, first off, good to be here, fellas. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Phoenix, Ratio, Batra. Love you guys. I also love that I'm like coming from the West. It kind of feels like a Rocky movie to me. I'm like, here we go. Man, D&D is so wild. It's a beautiful game. Dungeons and Dragons. It's considered tabletop RPG or like tabletop role playing. And the only reason they call that is because you play it, like on a table, like a board game. Like typically there's, little pieces of a map set out. Oftentimes you play with dice and you roll them like you would a board game. And, the idea is that you're embodying another character like you would in Skyrim, but instead of it like happening with video processors, your dungeon master or game master, GM, has like a huge book that has like a bunch of different scenarios and like similar to a choose your own adventure almost, where it's like, at the end of this dusty trail, the road forks. To the right, you see towering spires. To the left, a dark forest. And then in the book, there'd be a bunch of shit that's like, in the forest, there's this. In the spires, there's that. And it's kind of sort of like a magic trick where whenever it's like not going well, you're kind of like, okay, who is this? What is this? Like, why am I at this kid's birthday party, watching a magician? But when it's going well, it's really, really rad because it's collaborative storytelling. It's really fun, like tactical management of resources, of like health and magic or, whatever your character is.
Yeah.
But there's also like the element of the dice telling the story. Like Batra was playing I had a Streamiversary game that, by the way, I found out it was my Streamiversary on the calendar, but then days after that, Twitch sent me an email that was like, your Streamiversary's coming up, like, get ready. And I was like, dude, I just had my Streamiversary. What the F?
Right.
But the game that we streamed on Twitch and that we do sometimes on Twitch is that, but played through Zoom and played through what's called a digital tabletop, which has like, areas that you can share maps and share music to set the mood, etc. But it's honestly, in my opinion, almost like an art form because it has a lot of improv and a lot of performance in it too. It's hard to describe, but once you're in, like it's deep.
Yeah. But like,
I think it's more about the connection, right?
yeah. But I want to ask something like, what makes us different from other role-playing games? Like, there's Dungeons and Dragons and there are other role-playing games, but like what makes Dungeons and Dragons like role-playing game?
Totally. The differences between the systems, like Vampire the Masquerade or Pathfinder is another big one. I just got one called Cypher that's really fun. You can find tons of differences, but like the big ones, like the ones that really like separate it, are the way the mechanics or the rules are set up.
Yeah.
Right.
Dungeons and Dragons, and it's partly why Abacha was like, I'm still like, I played, I enjoy it, I still don't feel like I all the way get it, and it's because there's so many rules. The rule learning thing is not fun, but I always say that in D&D, it's much easier to sort of just like get in it and start doing it, and things start to make a lot more sense after the fact. But to put it succinctly, what makes D&D D&D is that, the specific rules it has, yes, but it's a very close reference point to a lot of high fantasy, like Tolkien, like Robert Jordan, like Ursula Le Guin, like a lot of like big Western fantasy authors that wrote about wizards or wrote about, the interactions of dragons and men. Like that was direct reference point for the creators of Dungeons and Dragons in the late 70s, early 80s. So like as Dungeons and Dragons kind of came and blossomed and took root, other games sort of came in and made different versions of it. So D&D is like the original Vampire, and then these other systems are iterations of that, and really fun ones, but they're just a little bit like, some are less focused on combat and more focused on rules that allow you to role play and potentially convince people or lie to them or persuade them, right? As opposed to like, I want to see if my arrow hits the guy, and it's kind of different strokes for different folks. It's sort of like whenever you're picking out an RPG video game, there's like 50 of them. That's kind of how it's become with tabletop,
Right.
So we have seen, the anime. You know about anime, I hope.
Oh yeah.
Anime, or the American Netflix cartoon shows, which they claim to be anime, which are not. So, so there are animes and there are American cartoons who wanna be animes. So they have a very, storytelling. The narrator does a bit of storytelling while the anime progresses. So is the role of Grandmaster or Dungeon Master, I'm sorry, similar to that narrator in a anime or...
Big time similar to the narrator, but they also step in and will voice all of the characters that aren't played by the human friends that are playing with them.
Mm-hmm.
We call those NPCs, right? So they voice like the action, the narration, but then they come in and voice all the NPCs too.
Right.
That's
right.
great.
I think that's one thing. So I can what I can summarize for people, so to make it more clear. So basically, understand this is a game, okay, and you're an actor, right? So basically, you're acting as a character that the dungeon master is actually guiding you to. So that's how it works, right? Because this took me a lot of time to understand. Okay, I was watching a lot of streams, but I was like, okay, what I have to do, okay, and so that's one good thing. I think one of the biggest influences of having Dungeons and Dragons, because I was just going through how Dungeons and Dragons been working in India as well, right? So we have like very very small quantity of people who've been playing it. But it's more about, it started when, it's the Stranger Things came in. Stranger Things had a big impact on how Dungeons and Dragons work. So is it like accurately more closer to the, the game? Or is it just like, they just had a concept and just moved on it and made it their own?
They do a good job with it. I mean, like, there's one point, I don't know what season it is. I think season 3, where like they join the table of like the cool D&D kids that are playing D&D. And Vecna, for example, like Vecna is like old school D&D reference. Like he was one of the original villains in the 80s.
Vecna is real in D&D? Is he real?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's this wizard that sought to live forever and like did all this crazy shit and was going and basically like tried to live forever, tried to become a god. I thought he got himself.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I thought they just made it for the serial, like Stranger Things.
Yeah, I mean, like that's how deep D&D roots go. Yeah, but like the the only thing I'd say about the Stranger Things thing is that they do they streamline it a little bit. Like the 20-sided die is the big decision maker in D&D. Like if say, Gravach or, Batra was coming up and he wanted to try to pry open this door that had sort of rotted shut, maybe deep within a dungeon or the bottom level of a castle, whatever it would be. I would maybe ask him to either make a lockpick check or a strength check. And depending what kind of character, Batra had decided to play, maybe he's playing a barbarian, that's just like all muscle, 2 axes, and he's about to bash this door down.
Mm-hmm.
Or, he could be playing, more of like the riffraff, street rat, pickpocket.
But Butter deserves to play the dwarf.
Yeah, there you go. Totally. Dwarf with a beard suggested.
Yeah. Snow White, you got your dwarf.
Snow White calling me right now.
Yeah, we have our scripts,
No, that's good. That's good. Snow White is in a castle. The rest of us are dwarfs.
So Pedro, but we have known that there are other board games and other role playing games, but you don't need a DM or a GM that's narrating you. But there's especially this is kind of a board game, you can say. It's played on the board, right? And we need DM to get us into the game. Like when we play it, we always need a DM. Then why is it so for this game that we need a DM, we need a narrator so that he could take us into the game? Why is it so?
Yeah. And I've never played a sort of DM or GM-less tabletop game. I know that people love them and they exist. Like I'd like to, just to sort of, check it out.
Mm-hmm.
The big difference is that and this for some people, it's a great question. For some people, this is also what kind of makes D&D like weird for them or a little questionable for them is that, I mentioned the adventure guide. I'm actually holding up the player's handbook. So if anybody watches this, they're like, oh, it's the player's handbook. There's not the guide. But like they look very similar. So whatever. But what the fuck? But the difference is that like if we were playing a campaign and Batra knows this because he hopped on that live stream. And Batra, we should, not necessarily right now, but you and I should spend 10 minutes just talking about that because so bad, dude. I made him an enemy, but with me. So I was like, we're both playing enemies and like we're fighting the main guys, but like, no, all the enemies for the most part get chopped to pieces. That's sort of like the point of the game,
It's okay. It's okay if you chop Batra to pieces. We don't mind.
And it was just great because Batra was really tactically. At one point, you tried to like convince them to chill out, which was such a great play. And I just wish I'd prepped you more. But the reason we have the DM is because let's say in the example of a door, within the bottom of this castle.
Mm-hmm.
If Batra's character has snuck down there, let's say that they're trying to open this door and they use strength. So they're trying to like wrench the door open or they're throwing their shoulder against it. The DM would describe it, right? The loud thudding of this strong shoulder upon this door. And depending on the success of Batra's roll, if you kind of, sometimes in the adventure book, they'll say the difficulty class or the challenge class, and that just means how high you have to roll. So oftentimes it's 10 or 15. If it's something really hard, it'll be like 18, and if it's like super duper, like next to impossible, it'll be above 20. There's nothing that goes higher than 30, but the dice itself only goes up to 20.
20. Yeah.
So that's where you get into like characters and there's modifiers. You can, if you're really good at something, you have a bonus to it, a plus. But if there's a situation like with this door, where let's say that the difficulty challenge is 15 and Batra rolls a 13. So he's close, but he's just beneath it. That's kind of a judgment call for the DM. Like, do you just say that the guy throws his shoulder out and it's like, my shoulder, or as is often the case for me, if you don't succeed, but it's still doable, it just takes a longer amount of time. But for a DM that's really good, maybe they'll be like, okay, Batra, you're down there. You get a 13. Okay, cool. So this door's old. It's rusted shut. It's sort of stuck, and the actual foundation of this castle perhaps has shifted. such that this door is caught in its framing. But as the increases and you continue now for minutes, moving 5, 6, 7 minutes, your body's sweating, throwing yourself against the wood, eventually it gives way. But maybe what he doesn't know is that because he rolled below a 15, 2 guards heard all this banging.
Yep.
And are now making their way down, right? And so that's where a good GM or DM will be able to take the adventure book, take the creativity of the player being like, no, I'm just going to bash the door down, let's go. And then find a way to realistically make that work, in a way that feels genuine and feels challenging. Because if it's just as simple as like, oh, okay, you want to knock the door down, cool, roll the die. Okay, you rolled an 8. Okay, the door bursts open. Like there's no strategy or risk or challenge there. So the GM is very much trying to protect the rules, but also like build the story, if that makes sense.
So
Right. I think
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying, like every DM or GM is different. Like they think different, they roll different, and they make people play different. So how's it like it's not the same game every time you play it, right?
Totally.
No.
And let me just actually pull this up.
Yeah, it's like, so what I can say is, okay, so thing is, if you think in terms of, how everyone's have a different story. That's the first point you need to understand. Like everyone makes a different story for a D&D. So like John has a different story. If someone has like there's another DM, he'll have a different story for his game. Okay, the rules of the game are the same, but the story is different. You know how everything plays out, right? The characters are different, right? So when I was playing, right? Okay, now I'll give you my experience, like a 5-minute break, okay? So this is what I was playing, right? John had given me some basic lines, okay? He'd given me 2 lines so that this is what you have to say. Okay, so I was like, okay, fine, I'll do that. Right, but then it's the fact that, he had to guide me through everything. So he's like, if he wasn't there for me, I wouldn't have been, done that 5-minute segment. Even if I was there for 5 minutes and I was like really sweating. I was like, okay, what do I have to say? Because like, people are watching me right now. There's like 7 people who actually know D&D and I'm hopping what D&D is, okay? So he was like, okay, so these are your options, okay? This is what you can do, right? This is the stuff that you can do. These are your options, right? This is what your character can do, okay? So he gave me like a sheet, okay? And there's like written combat stuff that, my character was like this a creature that could turn into stone, okay? And can go invisible. Yeah, the gargoyle, right? And it could go right in the air. It could fly, right? And so it was him who guided me through everything, but it was my option to do everything that I wanted to do, right? So I think the fact that you need to have a DM actually makes it more easier for you, because you don't get stuck at a point and be like, oh, I'm actually clueless. Where do I go? Right? Because if you think that point, there's always someone who's gonna counter. So for example, someone says, oh, I'm gonna go throw fire at you, and I'm like, oh, I have a water shield. So you need to have and you need to have someone to guide you through, and how everything happens. So I think that's plus point of a DM that I found out through playing D&D for 5 minutes.
No, I saw that stream, when John was guiding Batra. Like I saw that part when he was playing gargoyle or something. Then Then John was guiding him like do you want to hide into the bush, or just do you want to sit on the top of the castle and just look around everything, and then you can attack when nobody's watching you or something like that. So that made me like this game, like just John told me, the dice has 20 different possibilities, right? And it can go in any direction. It's totally clueless. You can play different characters anytime. Even if you play the same character, the outcomes would be so different. And this makes this game very different from any other role playing or cardboard game that we have played. So it's great, man. What I have seen is great.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys tuning in and truly asking. Like it's such a fun. I mean, like if you enjoy storytelling, and if you enjoy like writing or performance or any of that kind of stuff, like it's really an amazing way to kind of partake in it. And I think I just kind of wanted to show you guys this real quick. This is the Dragon of Icespire Peak. This is an official guide, the wonk, but this is like, I've run this multiple times and it's never gone the same way. Like there's a dragon in all of them, but In some of them, like, they try to protect the town. There's been some times where the party will go and more or less be like, pay us and we'll consider it. You know what I mean? Like, so, people do all kinds of different things. But a fun thing that they build into this campaign is, yes, each time the characters arrive at a location tagged on the map or prepare to leave that location, roll a d20 and consult the dragon location table to determine Cryovane, that's the dragon, to determine the dragon's whereabouts. So essentially, anytime you're playing this campaign and you're like, okay, cool, we want to go to the forest, I want to go to the Lost Waterfall. Anytime you move, the DM is supposed to roll a d20. And that creates like about a 5% chance that where you're going or where you're leaving, this dragon is going to just show up. And it's really badass, especially when you start the campaign and you're really low level and don't have a lot of health. The dragon shows up, you're like, what? Like, I'm a level 1 character. Like, and it's like, yeah, dude, like, run the fuck away. And so then, like, you set this tone of, wow, okay, snap, like, danger is real.
Yeah.
Like, the whole point of the campaign, oh my gosh, my lovely wife. Thank you, baby. Appreciate it. Look at that. That's my assistant that I'm sleeping with.
Right.
Okay, babe. It's married, and we're married. No, she's so sweet. But
Okay,
just
so I have to marry someone to get me coffee.
yeah, exactly. You guys are like, it's midnight because you relate, dude.
Right.
But check this out. Like, this is a map, right? So this is different locations they would have on it. I would share this on the screen or on the Zoom, and then people would tell me, oh, I moved there, I moved there. But there's a great bit that's like, when the characters are entering or moving the iron gates, any loud noise in the courtyard will alert the creatures in areas 10 and areas 18. So roll initiative for these characters and have them react as follows. And then they give me some actions. So it's not just that the DM is like, pulling things out of a hat. Like, there's a lot that's very, very structured. But instead of it being like a video game where, you hit left on the joystick and a bunch of ones and zeros react, if you say left to the DM, they have to sort of initiate it and move it.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Right. So I've heard that there are different type of dice in the game. So if you would like, tell us more about it, how it works in game. If you would like to give more idea about the viewers to the
It's the D20 is definitely like the lead die. The majority of the time, if you want to do anything from, casting a lot of spells to trying to hit somebody with your sword, you roll a D20. The other die are, all the way from 4-sided up to 12. And people love the 12-sided die because it's so chunky. But I mean, it holds it up. It doesn't really do much without feeling like the weight of it. But I mean, in terms of it's a good way to think about the use of the die. Like, a dagger is a 4-sided die. So if you successfully try to hit someone and you roll a D4. And I love that in the sense that it's like, there is some range. Like, if Batre hits me, like, depending on like where I am, if I'm like turning into it or if I see it, I'm like, oh shoot, like, the same punch could like knock me out, or I could react in time to sort of like get out of there and it'd only be a deflecting blow or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's how a D4 would be used. A battle axe is a D12. So like, if you really catch someone well with like a big weapon, you can really do some damage. There's other uses as well, like, pretty much anything meaningful in the game that could be a success or a failure is often left up to the dice. I mean, if I'd really been a thoughtful guest, I would have gone ahead and created character sheets for you guys and like sent them to you. It's just so you could see them, because it's like, I know it's a lot of like talking in numbers, but once you get in it and you see how flexible it is, it's really fluid and really beautiful. Really.
I mean, you can send it if you have pictures or something. You can send it. We can add it in the post edits.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
No, not right.
Probably we can have take it. Or probably we can have another. Or probably we can have another episode. Yeah.
I mean, if John's up to it,
it'd be good for reference, because it's like, it'd be good to see how
Nah,
Yeah,
it would be
I don't
good
want to do
because
too much talking with that scene.
yeah, because see, I was when I was doing research about what Dungeons and Dragons are, I saw you have this character, you have this type of, he's
Yes,
a
yes,
warrior,
yes.
he's a thief, then you have so
Yeah.
much type of weapons, and you have to roll things, this number this, number that. I was like, what the fuck? I have to research this just for a podcast.
Yeah,
You can hang me. But now I'm talking to John and like it's so easy, it's so simple. Why was I so confused? Why was I panicking? So yeah, I mean definitely when you hear it from an experienced person, it makes a lot of difference.
And especially
how-
from a dungeon master. So it
And
makes
especially from a dungeon master, that is.
yeah.
Yeah.
By the way,
Also, yeah.
yeah, whoever
Go.
is watching, whoever is watching, John is a dungeon master. He make people play with him, and he's the
Yeah.
master who gets everyone to play. Yeah, Batra.
Yeah, I was saying that you gotta also thank John for coming on the podcast because he's a very busy guy, first of all,
Yeah.
and number two, he's very talented in terms of he's also an actor, right? And he's also like an improviser. So we know like this guy he also does voice acting, right? So this guy has the variety of having those kind of accents and also having those kind of characters, and he gives like every character has he gives like a different life to that character, right? So if you go and check out his streams, if you go to Twitch, we'll link now everything in description. His the socials and the YouTube and whatever John's comfortable with. But it's about how it's about actually watching a movie, right? And you're actually in a movie. It's something more like that, and you're actually making your actions, right? Of course, you have rules, but you're still doing actions, right? So it's about he is such good at giving characters life, that you actually feel like, oh, they're actually memorable. So it's like, oh, it's a British character, so he's like, oh, he's gonna have these kind of traits, right? So this is what he's gonna do. So you start to kind of relate that. So I think we gotta give kudos to John for that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, G, truly. It's like, because I know, I mean, even just being in streaming and being in podcasting, like, you guys clearly like understand a lot about well, I mean, you have to have a basic understanding of tech, period, but like, I'm sure you guys enjoy media and enjoy shows and movies, television, etc. Do you guys, and there's no wrong answer, it's just gonna like, based off of what I was about to say, do you guys like fantasy in terms of like, the classic Tolkien kind of stuff? Or are you guys more kind of modern kind of, adventure stuff? Or what's like an exciting adventure movie for you guys?
So I think
For me, it's the script. If the script is good, then whatever works for me.
No, but
It's a fantasy
stop giving diplomatic answers.
No.
Podcast. This is a
me.
podcast.
No, trust me. Like, if the script is good, I like it. Doesn't matter if the
Bro,
movie
this is
or a
the
fantasy.
least.
He's a director now.
This is
He's just
the,
like a director now.
this is the most possible diplomatic answer you could have given in the podcast.
Okay, so I'm into both. I'm into both as long as it's
Give us a name. Give us a name.
okay. Listen, I like Stranger Things, and I watch Marvel and DC movies too. So it's whatever works for me. Whatever.
I think Lord of the Rings would be a good example.
Yeah,
Lord of the Rings would be.
Will I be judged if I say I haven't?
No, that's what I'm trying to hear. That's what I need to hear. That's what I need.
But I watch a lot of isekai. I mean, isekai is also stands for fantasy. I think it's a Japanese term.
It is.
I watch a lot of pardon me. I watch a lot of fantasy anime. My No Pain No Life. No Pain No Game. No Game No Life, where they would go into an anime fantasy world, or the Shield hero. He also gets teleported to another world, and he has a shield as his main weapon. I watch a lot of fantasy anime, so I'm really into it.
Yeah.
I love fantasy anime. Like, I do not understand Dungeons and Dragons, but I have seen it, and I can watch someone play that for hours, and I would not mind watching them. Like, I love such things.
Yeah. And
Let's-
how do you feel about it?
I was saying that listening to Phoenix, this asked me the most important question. Okay, the elephant in the room. Is Dungeons and Dragons for nerds?
Oh wow, yeah, that's such a great question. I love
Because
saying,
we've seen the show be like, oh, you what? You play Dungeons and Dragons? Oh, I'm gonna get a cool shirt.
Now,
Nerd.
it's also set in the 80s, right? It's also set, 40 years ago. Times have changed. No, but 100%. In totally copy that, Rasho and Phoenix. Like I hear you on that. It's well put. I mean, I always like to say that I got into acting for the money, and I got into D&D for the chicks. And it's obviously like not true. Like actors barely get paid, and like D&D is like not a great place to meet girls. It's a great place to meet like dudes, with like neck beards that are living in Iowa City. But no, that's like the old school way, and I feel like people in TTRPG, like we love kind of like referencing that, back when it wasn't cool. And I never played back when it wasn't cool, but even then I'm like, oh man, like it was so different. And yeah, no, it's changed. Stranger Things blew the lid off it. Like it made it very kind of mainstream and accessible. And I think really, the pandemic, man, like people were so, I mean, obviously like tons of, just chaos and pain and loss of money and time and I think a lot of people, especially when you're not working, it's hard to feel as purposeful or as satisfied, right, with what you're doing. And I knew a ton of creatives, that fell into D&D because it was collaborative. It was a way to sort of like do, even if it was just doing like some accent work or some vocal work, whatever it would. But on top of that, it felt really exciting. Like I'm telling you, man, whenever you've been playing a character for 2 years and you're getting close to the end of the campaign and you're on a death save and it's like all on this one dice roll, that feeling is wild. It's wild.
Right.
I mean, because you're basically just like, oh shit, like I put in so much energy into this, like I want it to work. Like I don't want to die in this like bloody tower, like I think this dude's a necromancer. I don't know what he's going to do to my corpse, like please roll an 11 or higher. Oh my God. And man, I've never, and it's funny because my wife is an actor and she's really, really good. And she gets, I mean, I'm sure you guys know too. I mean, just like in your own creative fields or watching something that you really think is high level creativity, like that feeling of goosebumps or that feeling of, oh my gosh, like this is, wow, like this is alive right now. This is incredible. Even as an audience, you're like, whoa, that feeling is like what I chase as a performer. You know what I mean? That feeling of like, oh my God, this is so real. Oh my God. And you can feel it as an actor, like, and it's wild because like whenever you're feeling it, doesn't always mean the audience is feeling it. So you kind of have to be aware of that cross contamination. But that feeling of being plugged in whenever it's D&D is one of the most unique performative experiences I've ever felt in my life. Like it was so visceral and so like alive and scary in a way that a play and a show hasn't ever been.
So, right. John, you said you're 34, right? So, when you were, you were born into basically 90s or something, 90s or 80s, and you told us that this game, it was a late 80s game that people used to play or kids used to play, right? So, I want to know, like, when did you first start playing this game?
Thank you so much for asking that, Raisha, because it opens up a Pandora's box of family secrets. I'm from Houston, Texas, and
right.
And I've got 4 brothers, no sisters. So we were a basketball team running around. And yeah, exactly, right, exactly. I mean, just like ball movement, and and we had some neighbors that lived right next door to us that were really nice. I mean, like I didn't know the parents super well, but knew the 2 kids, and one of them, the boy, was one of my older brother's age, and he had a sister that was sort of like between me and my younger brother.
Mhm.
So we would like, play and they would come over and shoot hoops or whatever. And and this is where it gets like my parents were and still are, God bless them, like extremely conservative Christians and not necessarily conservative like politically. They kind of like weren't all that political, but more just very concerned with, I mean, like we didn't have video games for a long time until
Right.
kind of early 2000s. And, we weren't allowed to read certain books. And there was this weird point in time where like Batman was like on the fence because he was so dark and it was like a dark Gotham. And it's like, bro, it's fucking Batman, But all that to say, that's like sort of the household we were living in. I mean, very sweet. They loved us. They took great care of us, but they were weird about some stuff in pop culture, right?
Yeah.
And our neighbors were not that way. Like they had Sega Genesis. They have like whatever. They've got all this crazy stuff. We're looking around like, oh my God. And so we would be over there all the time, like playing Sonic the Hedgehog or playing Streets of Rage. And I'm literally like looking over my shoulder, like, oh my God, like don't tell anybody. And I'll never forget, man, they pulled out this huge box, like board game, and it's Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like 9, and so they're breaking it down for me, and they're like, this is, they're honestly probably doing a much worse job than I just did. So if anyone's confused, know that it can get worse. Like, because I'm also 9, and they're kind of like, oh, it's like this, it's like that. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's do it. And they barely had any classes. Like Phoenix talked about that, the different classes you can play, like a wizard or a barbarian or a paladin. I think they only had 3. They had wizard, cleric, and fighter. And so I picked a fighter and like he asked me some questions. I rolled some dice. The sheet was like a mile long back then. It was way more complicated. So filling it out. And I went home and was telling some of my brothers that weren't there with me what we'd done. And more or less my mom overheard me and was like, what was that? I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm like looking at my brothers like, oh, fuck. Like, what do I do? And they're looking at me like, you're on your own, partner. And I'm like, oh, shit. And so I look up and I'm like, I like tell the truth. I'm like, I was at the Feinsteins and, blah, 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 blah. And man, yes, obviously she was like, John, you can't do that. Oh my God. I mean, like we might have even prayed about it, like right then and there. And I don't mean to make light of religion at all. I more mean to make light of my mother, and so she's like, we gotta like, this is dangerous. This is demonic. I mean, like in the 80s, 90s in Christian circles, Dungeons and Dragons was like 2 clicks away from devil worship.
Yeah. I
laughed at that. Yeah, totally. So that was the vibe, you know what I mean? So back in the day, man, it was like very fringe. It was not cool at all. And it more, especially like where I grew up in Texas, had this connotation of like evil. So I all that to say, I built a character. I was exposed to it, never got to play. It was like ripped out by my parents. And then in high school, kind of a similar situation, like made another character, played a couple times with some friends and their DM. And I just didn't quite get it. Like it wasn't explained well. And they were playing kind of fast and loose with the rules. And it just didn't make sense. But then in 2019, in 2018, a group of actors wanted to play. And the timing was just perfect. And I know I've been talking a lot, but this is the last thing, is that the thing that always bothered me, even whenever I was 8 or 9, and it was being explained, was that it felt really arbitrary. Like it felt like the DM basically controlled everything. It felt like he could just be like, rocks fall and you die.
Exactly.
Everybody is like, I guess he could. I mean, if you have a shitty DM, it's going to be a shitty game. No way around it. Like there's just no way past that. But if you have an anyway halfway decent DM, all they're doing is like making sure the rules happen and like arbitrating the action. And then everything after that becomes like free form creativity and collaboration. which is super fun.
Yeah. So, like, let's say somebody's playing for the first time. For example, when you were playing for the first time, you said your DM was was very shitty, and he just did whatever he wanted to do at that time.
Right.
Let's say, yeah, let's say someone is playing for the first time in 2023, and
Yeah.
he gets a DM like who's open to any idea, who's open to just take the game players at any point. Just say, like, who's playing for the first time. Just imagine a boy who's playing for the first time and he's really nervous about playing. Like, for example,
Mhm.
Putra, he's very nervous about playing for the first time, and like, what should he do, and what should the basic rules that he should remember while playing this game.
Totally. And I mean, well, yeah. Again, had I sent you a sheet, it would be more helpful here. But the idea of, and you know what? Can I just drop something in the chat? Is that possible?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just drop this. Where is it? Hold up.
Yeah, you can push it in general chat.
Let me just drop this in the shibbity boop. What should I do? General chat?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so this is a character sheet for and I'm back, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, my
And this is just a reference point. Like, this is a character I'm playing for a game that I'm playing on Twitch. Yeah, sorry about that. I guess I just more wanted you to be able to reference, like, if you open it up and you look at the first page, I mean, there's tons of stuff written on this. I mean, it might as well be written in Latin, right? I mean, this is all just chaos without reference points. So I appreciate your patience.
Brother, that's a lot.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. This is all I wanted to point out, though, was the left side of it. You have the 6, like, core abilities or skills: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, all the way down.
Right.
That's sort of like the basic, like, stat block of what makes your character, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you were playing like a barbarian, your strength would be like 18. I'm playing like a 14-year-old girl that's a wizard, and her strength is 8. And those are things that you roll dice for, and it's all random. And if you see just kind of still on the left side of the first page, but there's a rectangular box that has acrobatics, animal handling, arcana, like about 18 or 20 skills.
Yeah.
And those are the main things that you use to go through the world. Like, let's say, for example, in the example of Batra being deep in the basement of this castle and try to pry open this door, right? If he wanted to try to open it with like his dagger or like a lockpick, it would probably be a sleight of hand check. We'd ask him to roll a d20, and then if you look at that skill block, Gabby has a +3 to the sleight of hand. So if Batra was playing this character, he would roll a d20 and then add 3 to it. If, for example, he was like, no, fuck it. I'm just going to try to bash the door down with my shoulder, even though he's playing Gabby, a 14-year-old wizard. He would roll an athletics check, which, if you look at the top of that skill block, is actually a -1. So that sort of gives you a feel for like how the character you create, I mean, obviously in this case, I created it, but that a player would create, how that translates to the game and trying to play it with a 20-sided die. You know what I mean? And and I would say, just relative to like good DM, bad DM, like the bad DM I was referencing, I mean, he's still like one of my best friends in the world. We were just like 15 or whatever. So it just wasn't the skill of reality and of like balancing and of making it happen. It just wasn't there. We just wanted to swing some swords and cast some spells and shit. So yeah, like there's no right way to do it, but there are a ton of wrong ways to do it, and you kind of just have to hopefully find a DM that is doing it one of the right ways,
Right. So I wanna do this part of the podcast. It's called the rapid fire. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's go. Bring it on, dude.
Bring it.
I was just watching a lot of Carpe's. If you go to the streams, there's like a segment called a rapid fire, which is like a series he does between two DMs, right? So it's always like, okay, so it's now your turn to say it, GM or DM.
Yeah. I love it. People have strong opinions about that, dude.
How about you?
Yeah.
Do you like DGM or DM?
I like DM because I like Dungeon Master, man. I'm trying to get into the murk. Like, I want to take you, like, I like my games to feel like a Shakespearean play,
Right.
and also like body horror. Like, I want it to feel very, like, scary and dangerous, but epic at the same time.
Right.
You
Do you like playing the game or do you like, being the dungeon master?
Dude, I love both so much. I really, 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 really do. Like,
But if
playing,
if you have to choose one side, which one?
Yeah.
man, that's intense. Yeah, exactly. If I could only do one for the rest of time, I guess it would be DM. But I would be heartbroken. I really would be. I'd be like, no.
I saw that coming. I saw that coming.
You know?
By the way, I didn't prepare this. Okay, this is coming straight away.
No,
So
hey, freestyle it, baby.
do you like killing the character or do you like telling them to be like, oh, this is the end for you?
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa. No, man. I've only killed a handful of player characters and did not enjoy it. Like, I mean, felt very guilty, If only because like it was a very high level spell. It's like dangerous as fuck, but this was like the final boss, so they knew that it was going to be dangerous. But the person that I ended up killing, he's like such a nice guy, and
Yeah.
it just he's also the guy I probably know the least from the party, although I do know him well. But it really got me where I was like, man, it shouldn't have been you, Jesse. Like he had just popped off a spell and hurt the bad guy really bad. And then another thing had happened to get his attention onto this character. And it was just bad luck. And I felt bad about it, But it also was super sick. Like, everyone at the table was just like, oh my God. Like, it really upped the immersion immensely. Everyone was like,
Right.
oh my God, are we all fucked? Like, it was very intense.
Right. So do you like a dark character or like a brighter character?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm playing him,
Yeah.
I like lighter.
Oh, no,
Because
we
I
cannot be
like
friends.
Toad. Like, I'm playing a character right now that's like he's sort of like a surfer almost, like from San Diego, and he's like very chill. And it's mainly because I'm kind of trying to be like Bruce Lee, like be water. Like, it's all good. And then if someone pisses me off, I'll sneak off and like steal from them, But whenever I'm DMing, I like characters that are like, I mean, like Batman, like, just dark and fucking like all this stuff and real dangerous, Like those type of guys that feel like they just like stepped out of a sewer and are like, drunk on kerosene or whatever. Like, because that's the shit that I like putting in front of my characters, my players.
Right.
Then they're like, oh my God, like, who is this guy? Like, should we continue into the woods? This guy seems awful,
Yeah.
And that stuff is fun,
Okay, cowboys or pirates?
I'm going Cowboys, baby. Pew!
Right. We go to Rishi, you got it.
Maybe because
done with the
because he's American, that's why.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So I have a question. So you said, that there are sometimes shitty DMs which can ruin your story. Sometimes, yeah.
No.
I mean, you can.
Give us the PDF of that.
Yeah, no, I'm totally joking. Yeah, I'm like, hey, okay. Here we go.
So have you ever found shitty players? Like, they are there to ruin the mood of others, and you purposefully kill them, and then laughed at it, and then you were like, oh no, you died, but then inside your heart, you were like, kill,
Yes.
But that was for the
So good.
You know, this
Right.
this this podcast shouldn't be about Dungeons and Dragons. It should be about the dark secrets of Joan and the Carpe the DM.
Yeah, exactly. This is my last confession. Is here, here on the 4Cast. Oh my God! No, man, this is a great question. It's really well put. I mean, first off, like I myself have been a shitty DM. You know what I mean? There's been times where I've been like, oh, fuck, I messed that up, or like I got confused about this and they wanted that, and oh damn, I messed that up, didn't I? And so that just like happens. You know what I mean? Like the nature of improv, and especially when you're playing a campaign that's gone on for years. Now they're like going back to some village they were at 2 years ago. And they want to see the one-eyed shepherd guy. And I'm like, where the fuck is he? You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I remember him, but like, fuck, what's his name? What's his voice? Like, and they just take it for granted because you're just like a Rolodex of information and characters and all this shit. But sometimes when you don't have it as a DM, that's the worst. You're like, 1 second, like, and so that happens. And same thing as being like a shitty player, because there's definitely been times where I just have either misinterpreted or I've been like, bummed out, where I'm like, oh no, like, wait, I didn't mean for it to come across that way. Like, wait, come back, queen. Like, hold on. Like, let me rephrase it. And so like they talk about in D&D a lot about rule 0. And rule 0 is that the DM like has the final say, yes, but like needs to kind of receive a little bit of respect. Like in the same way that on the soccer pitch, like, maybe after the 3rd, 4th late tackle, you're coming up and being like, hey, like, what the fuck? Blah, 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 blah. But like by and large, you're letting the ref go. Maybe you're giving him a little bit of like, man, you saw what he did to me, but like, okay, whatever. But for the most part, like you're giving him space, you're respecting the call, even if you don't like it. So that's how that goes a lot of times. With shitty players, like I have to be completely honest, like I've never really had like a shitty player like that. Mainly just because like I know how critical it is for everyone at the table to be cohesive. You know what I mean? And feel safe and feel like collaborative and respected and so like there's been buddies that have wanted to come on and play and not that I've been like, oh no, you can't, but more I've been like, let's wait and find the right time, because not because it's like, it wouldn't be copacetic, but because I know because of their energy and the fact they don't know the game that well, like they need a different speed and scenario than coming in on some like high level fantasy shit that we've been playing for 3 years. They need like the training version. So I think that's just being a good DM, is recognizing that especially new players or like less experienced players, it's helpful. It's helpful to like explain things and take it slower, because I have also, and this was like years ago, but I still think about it because I felt bad about it. I've had players that have come in and eventually left because they like didn't really get it, like they enjoyed it and they were like, this is cool, man. And I know you love it and I appreciate being a part of it, but like, I just can't wrap my head around it. And, I mean, it's almost like if someone leaves a band you're in, you're like, oh,
like a rage quit. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Except it was the calmest quit in the world. They were like, hey, dude. It was true. It was like even worse because it was so calm. I was like, oh no, like I failed.
Like a cold quit.
Yeah, it was a cold quit. Yeah, exactly. Dude, don't sweet quit. Yeah.
Be angry.
And that just took me back because in retrospect, this is another thing they talk about in the Dungeon Master Guide and on, Dungeon Master Reddit and all that shit, is that like you kind of have to craft a little bit of your campaign to each character. You know what I mean? Like I have characters in games where I know the most important thing for them is like stabbing some shit, is like finding a way to feel justified, against the bad guy, and they have the moral high ground and they're going to do it. Superman versus Lex Luthor, cool. Then I have people that like want to be Indiana Jones and like deep in the temple, and like there's traps and there's poison and there's snakes, and the threats come, from the environment more than from this big bad dude with, the weapon. And then there's people that want to be in like a Bond film where it's like a bit of espionage, a bit of, infiltrating the casino and trying to talk their way, and then maybe get in a tactical position to take out the one guard, And so like these different play styles necessitate different encounters is what they call them. And
Right.
man, that's what I love about DMing. Like that's what I try to stream on Twitch is like, hey, we're about to go on a seafaring. There's about to be all this stuff on a ship. How do I prepare that? Like, how can I make that fun and engaging to these 5 or 6 players? And then obviously you do that and they make a decision that you didn't plan for. And then you just go that direction for 2 hours.
Right.
Because that happens all the time.
Like, I mean, this gives like, have you played that game Assassin's Creed?
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys have played that.
Love it.
So it's like you get like 3 options you gotta choose from, but then you in D&D you got like a 4th option that you can actually say something to the character, and that's how it responds. So I think that's like a whole new open that takes like different possibilities, like a whole new multiverse or something.
That's definitely how I view it, is like similar to a video game where it's like, which one do you want to do? Like, like those are, a good DM will build those into the world at every chance he gets, or they get, whoever.
When John said it was, it was a cold quit. For me, it was like a girl saying to me, I love you, but I can't marry you.
Yeah.
Shut up.
You're a great guy, Ratio. You're a great guy.
We can be friends.
I can't marry, but I can't marry.
We can be friends.
I want someone who's like this. I want someone like you. I want something that's in you. I want something you, but I don't want you.
I don't.
Yeah, exactly. I want a taller, richer, slightly more intelligent. I'm like, all right, then you don't want me. What the fuck?
Right.
So there, I want to ask you a question which might expose you. Have you ever killed a player? Have you ever killed a player and felt happy about it, but you didn't show it?
So good.
That is
So good. That's so funny. Oh my God. I mean, that's so funny.
I'm clipping this so that we can expose him later.
Okay, I'll say 2 things. I'll say that one time there definitely was a time where, and this guy's a good buddy of mine, we play all the time, but where the character they play is very brash and very sort of, you shoot first and ask questions later kind of thing. And they were in a town. There was a big festival going on in this town. All the outskirts, the small villages, everything outside has sort of consolidated into the city. It's sort of like Rome during the Colosseum days. And so like people are there, the city is teeming, like there's tons of nobility and people from, other major cities that are coming in for this Festival of Light. And one of like the main villains that's been established, and like he's kind of he's like, they can't get to him publicly. Like he's high ranking, but there's beef, and there's always that smoldering kind of thing. And they see him in this pub, and they more or less go up and try to talk some shit. And the right hand man of this villain, this wizard, is a very powerful swordsman. And the character in question that's sort of brash, her name's Gloris. She kind of steps forward and she more or less is like, I'm going to try to strike the sword out of this guy's hand. And anytime you try to do something that's contested, it's called the contested roll. So because she's basically trying to like disarm a master swordsman, I made it like a contest between them. Mm-hmm. And he very handily won, like the villain won. And so I described it as like, in a flash, like her sword is out of her scabbard, and at the same moment you hear the clinging of steel on steel. And disarming her, knocking from her hand, is her longsword, is this blade. And it led to this exchange where like one of the villains has at sword point like one of the party members, and they're all kind of talking shit, and it was such a power dynamic that I hadn't created. Like they had brought the fight to the villain and lost. And dude, it was such beautiful storytelling because it allowed this villain to kind of walk past them and sort of like pat the face, as they walk by. And it frothed them into this rage. Like they were so angry and they hated this guy and they felt like publicly embarrassed, and I just couldn't have been happier. I was like, ha ha ha, hee, like this is gonna drive them to do this fight. The second thing, same character, shout out Gloris, who's played by Brian Southern, who's the guy I DM with a lot. Like he's a dear friend of mine. We collaborate. He directed Coffee Cops. He directed Brothers Phillips. Like he directs all my shit. Like he's my boy. But he also DMs, and he would say the same thing. I know it. Like without a doubt, we make it like we challenge each other. Like he's created the most challenging situations I've had to deal with as a DM, and I have no doubt that I have created the most challenging situations he has had to DM whenever I have been a player in his games. But he was he just was like in combat, and they were deep in the sticks, and they were in the danger zone, and he got killed. His character dropped. And I just remember thinking, like, I wasn't happy. I didn't want him to die. But I remember thinking, like, I hope they realize that there is stuff in this world that's stronger than them. They can just fucking kill them. Because, like, it's, especially in a video game, that's what I loved about Elden Ring, is I'm like, I'm getting my ass kicked. Is that, it's rare in video games, and maybe even in life, that we feel that feeling of, oh, wow, like this is dangerous. Like this is, and we don't like feeling that as humans, as people, right? I mean, it's super uncomfortable. No one wants to feel threatened.
It's like you're part, the game's not part of you, you're part of the game.
Sure, totally. Like you feel it. You're like, oh God, this is like, you care about the character you're playing. So anyway, like they died and they were eventually resurrected because they did it fast enough. But that felt cool because I could tell they were like, oh snap. It changed the way that they played from there on, which was cool.
Right.
What I've read, for the first time players, someone told me that never, just go with the spells or cast, for the first take, because they are so confusing and everything with the cast and spells.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So basically what I want to ask you is how Dungeons and Dragons affected your career? Like you're an actor, right? So did Dungeons and Dragons have a role in your acting career or something? Like how did it?
I really have loved acting and performance for a super, since I was a child. Went to college for it and have always just really loved it. I love improv. I love comedy. I love Shakespeare. The idea of taking words and making them real or grounded or evocative or funny, right. Whatever the situation. I find that really engaging and challenging and rewarding. And, I really didn't fall back into D&D until, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And I would say the big, it's so hard to describe because I'd done improv forever. Had a lot of success with it. It had opened some doors within my acting and commercial career. And I always viewed improv as one of my best skills. I was like, man, I'm super quick. I'm great on my feet, blah, blah, blah. And whenever I started DMing, definitely that improv was utilized. All the time, but I didn't recognize how much in D&D I would have to be, almost like storyboarding or writing at the same time, where I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. I need to jot that down because later somebody's going to hear about that and be like, that was y'all? What the fuck? Or whatever. And that in turn has affected my improv, where now sometimes I'll be in an improv scene and I'm like, oh, damn, I know how this is going to end. And that's the DM in me, not the comedian in me that's thinking and planning and ooh, I'm not worried about the joke. I'm worried about the story.
Right.
And so that I've definitely felt has been almost heightening the improv and heightening the D&D and heightening they've been feeding into each other.
Switching.
Totally. And then the other thing is because of D&D, I've had to try to learn different dialects and try to learn, how would a Scandinavian person sound, or like, it's forced me to expand my vocal work to a really intense level I hadn't ever thought I would attempt. And that's been cool because like I can't do every single, accent in the UK. I can't do every perfect iteration of like Canadian or Aussie.
Of course.
But like, having like 10 or 15 or whatever, and then playing with the aspect of, even if it's just neutral American, the difference between nasally and neutral and guttural, like those types of choices, I've really seen it up my voiceover game massively, which has been cool.
Right. I want to ask two questions, and then we can probably close this episode. Unless
sure.
Phoenix, you have? Do you want to ask something else?
Yeah, I would like to ask, in old age times when there was no electricity, TV and stuff, there used to be storytellers. Like they would go around from village to village and they would, gather a crowd and tell a story. Imagine any story they want. And do you feel that Dungeons and Dragons is the same thing, but a bit more interactive? I mean, storytelling, but converted interactive.
Yeah, no, man, that's beautifully put. I definitely do. I mean, maybe not in the, taking it on the road sense, right? But definitely in that sense of people circling up and that kind of oral tradition. Like I've heard people describe D&D as like a group hallucination where like everybody is like, well, I mean, some people, feel free to have a drink or, get stoned or something, but like, it's almost like a group hallucination without chemicals,
Like Inception.
yeah, totally. Where you're like, everyone hold hands and now we're going to the jungle. Here we go. You know what I mean? And that's wild. And that's ancient. You're absolutely right. Like that kind of, that use of human creativity and human imagination, but having one force that's like painting it and driving it forward. It's beautiful, man. Like I mean, truly, I really think, and I'm laughing because I think, well, I need yeah, I'm like such a Twitch. I'm like, I love tech, but like some of the dinglings on Twitch, like with the streamiversary, really got me. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, no, this is the calendar anniversary of when I started streaming. They're like, no, it doesn't count. It's when you make affiliate. I'm like, okay, well, cool. But we should maybe at some point in time, like, it can be super quick. It could be 45 minutes, an hour. But it'd be really fun to play a little mini one shot with you guys, just to sort of like give you a taste of it because, I mean,
Make us an addict.
Well, I am. It's like a vampire. I'm just trying to like make another vampire, But truly, I think you guys would enjoy it because even if you just enjoy hanging out together, having some laughs, listening to each other, heightening the situation, like that's what D&D is in a nutshell,
Right.
So there was a second part towards the question. The younger kids, obviously you can see like the 25 or above, they would be interested in D&D because, you get to spend time with your friends. But
right.
The younger generations, 15, 16, who are like, I think the kids who are going to, like the next generation who's going to come, like when we are going to have kids, they would be born and like they will get birth and they will started using the phone. They will start. Yeah. That is what I'm trying to say. Even they will just like, oh, he's here. Do you want him to wear Oculus Rift or do you want him to wear iPhone goggles? What do you want? We will give a care package with your baby on your delivery. So, the younger generation are going to go a bit more technological. So, this game, where you spend time with your friends, it's, how come you can inspire the next generations or if you can inspire the younger kids to play this game?
Dude, yes. So good. I mean, my immediate two thoughts are one, I don't see anything wrong with like a world where we're all, I mean, maybe we're all across the globe from each other or chilling in the same living room, whatever. But we're all like, okay, I'll see you guys in there. You know what I mean? And then you're kind of just doing the same thing. The difference there is that, like, you know, in D&D, you can travel from one town to the other, and you know, we could really slow it down. And what are you guys doing on the road? Okay, roll for this. Or we could just be like, okay, cool. Roll a d20, and on an 11 or higher, you guys make it without anything bad happening. And on a 10 or lower, I'll roll to see what happens. And my point there is that, like, even with that younger generation, like, the tech obsession is obviously real and is obviously going to change things. But for me, the bigger aspect is that, you know, will this generation find it interesting and find it fun to sit around and talk to their friends? You know, because like they don't mind if they're playing like Call of Duty and it's like, yo, he's behind the train, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, do you want to do that without some external stimulation? And you're totally right, man. Like, I don't know. I think that, you know, I'm also a theater teacher. That's kind of like my day job, although, you know, right out to summer, so whatever. But dude, I mean, just like a vampire, I mean, first, second, third graders, sometimes I'll just bring a D20 and I'll line them up across from each other, like 2 lines facing each other. And I'll be like, all right, front of the line, come here. They'll stand across from each other. There'll be a stool. And I'll be like, this is the winner of wars. This is the winner of hearts. This is the reason why that earthquake happened, why that flock of birds fell from the sky, right? and everyone's like, what the fuck? And then I'm like, hold on, shut up. And I'm like, you know, and they go on to be like, this is, you know, it goes 1 to 20. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell a story one at a time using this die. And, you know, I can sometimes see like the other teachers, they're like, is he playing D&D? You know what I mean? I'm like, get the fuck out, get out. You know, but like the point is that it's theater, and all we're trying to do is like get creative and find a way to, you know, feel comfortable and confident, like saying something weird to somebody else or whatever. So I am hopeful because like children love it. Kids love it. Kids are still out there pretending to be Spider-Man and, you know, doing this, that, the other. And obviously they are like obsessed with their iPads, but they're also, their imaginations are still going. So I'm hopeful that it will be something the generation picks up, not even because I love D&D so much, but because I feel like D&D enhances social skills and tendencies that the world needs, dude. Like hanging out, listening, feeling comfortable, like feeling a little weird or uncool or like unsure of yourself, but still doing it. Like those are all skills that I think increasingly are more in demand, you know?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
For me,
So,
for me, it would be the last, 3 questions. Just I have so many questions, but I'm gonna ask just last 3.
I think we might need to make a second part. We can get another.
Definitely.
get to the show, man.
Do it. And I'll prepare some character sheets and we can just do a brief 20, 30 minute situation to give you guys like a feel for what's up.
Yeah, up for it. I'm up for it.
Yeah, me too. Wait. Yeah, I think we're down for that, man.
So basically, first my question, John, very quick, if you have to, assign us, the roles or, the characters for D&D, just be very quick and assign us some roles, like random roles. Me and Phoenix.
Funny. That's so funny, man. That's so funny.
It's up to Dungeon Master. It's up to Dungeon.
Like I like the actor in me hates that, but that's also like what the business is just like typecast. Okay, if I had to, damn, I would make Batra either a ranger or a paladin.
Or a dwarf.
Someone that is led with their physical expertise, but someone that's rooted in more classical training as well, has access to some magic, has a lot of utility, almost like a Swiss Army knife. Phoenix, I would probably make
you forgot dwarf. DWARF, dwarf.
and certainly a dwarf with a gigantic beard. I forgot the most important aspect. Yeah, that's so great. Also, like probably Seek. Yeah, that's so funny. And
Okay.
and then Phoenix, I would say probably a sorcerer for you, my man. Like, somebody that very charismatic, very almost like effortless in how they do what they do, but at the same time might not even be able to explain to you where that power comes from. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, here it is, And then Raisha, I would honestly either put this, you're the hardest one for me. I would either say a wizard or a cleric, because in both cases, both classes are like very, very studied and calculated, right? But also like vastly deep in their understanding of what is and what came before.
Mm-hmm.
So if pressed, that's what I would do.
That's nice.
You see, I had a heart here, heart. When you said I'm very charismatic, it started to melt and it's gone. My heart melted.
Let's
Right.
go.
Okay, so my second question is how old do you think this Dungeons and Dragons is? Like, people are playing it from 90s or 18s, or is it like just 1950s game or 60s kind of game?
Yeah, I mean, it was, so right now we're playing what's called 5th edition. It's called D&D 5e, like 5th edition. And the first edition came out, I think, in 1977.
77. Okay.
So, and like, for example, and that was first edition, obviously. They then, I think, had 2nd edition and then something that like immediately replaced it that was called like advanced D&D. And that's kind of considered like, 2.5 maybe. And a lot of people played advanced D&D. Whenever I was at my neighbor's house building that character, it was advanced D&D. So that was like mid 90s or whatever. But in the 2000s, they kind of did the same thing where they had a 3rd edition and then immediately were like, oh, wait, we need to adjust this, and made what's called 3.5. And that one in 2000 and 2001 definitely sort of like had a Stranger Things-esque pop, where it upped the popularity, it lowered, it like streamlined the rules where it wasn't as confusing for people, and so more people got into it. And Gurvanch, sorry, I don't know if before Batra, but the session that we ran where you play a gargoyle, that was actually that was a little mini adventure lifted from a campaign that was written in 2000. It was a 3rd edition campaign from 20 plus years ago, dude. And that to me is just like the power of D&D. Like, people have been enchanted by this for decades. So we're playing 5th edition, and by and large, people consider 5th edition to be the best. It's the easiest, even with the 100 rules, it has the least amount of rules. So it's been cool. Like, they've floated this thing called 1D&D, which is like 6th edition, and it's kind of whack. Like, it's pushed a lot of people away because they're just trying to monetize it. They're trying to like turn it into a subscription and stuff. And people are like, right, just hanging out in our living room, like using our imagination. What the fuck are you talking about? So yeah, there's been a long journey of it, but it's never been more cool, So if you're looking for a time to jump in, it's now, baby. You're it's as chill as it gets right now.
So from 1977 to 2023, it's almost kind of 50 years of D&D. And okay, so coming back to Stranger Things, which is my last question, and this would be the interesting question of this session. So we are waiting for season 5, like when the Vecna is connected to the will and he can feel on his back like Vecna is coming. He's not dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
According to you, what could be the end of Stranger Things season? It's just a fan theory.
Good.
It's just a fan theory. I'm just a Stranger Things
really
fan.
Good.
Me who haven't watched it, I'll stay silent.
Just
Let's start with Phoenix. Man. Well, that whole weird ass, like, I forget what they call it, but like the upside down, right? And the upside down, like the upside down, people disagree on it, but it's probably either in D&D a place called Shadowfell or a place called the Plane of Nine Hells. And it's probably Shadowfell, which is like this weird, dark.
Right.
It's like anti-Fae. It's like this weird in between. And in the Shadowfell, it's almost like the land of ghosts. It's like the land of the echoey shadows that existed in the real world, in the material plane. And so, traditional Vecna was this wizard, right, that was just chasing power, was chasing immortality, and chased it too far. And it both like corrupted his purpose and soul, but it also like almost immortalized his physical being. And so I think what we'll see happen is this breakdown between Shadowfell, i.e. the Upside Down, and the real world, i.e. the material plane.
Yeah.
And so I think you'll start to see like the postman will be walking and he'll be going to deliver and he's reaching out to the mailbox and all of a sudden, he's in Shadowfell. He's like, oh fuck, So I think that, much like Will sort of sees these things and goes back and forth, I think that phenomenon will start encroaching across everybody.
So
I definitely understood that everything.
yeah, so
Yes.
so that phenomenon is that real in D&D, or is just the Stranger Things kind of thing? Like the Upside Down, what you said, it's the dark and the red,
Well, there's no Upside Down, but in D&D, like the Vecna, there's been multiple iterations of Vecna, but like Vecna has something that's called Shadow Touch that literally can take someone into Shadowfell. So like that part is like completely from the books, and
Right.
the creators have talked about like they love D&D. They've played since they were kids. That's a big part of how they even like the kids and how they're kind of like a party of adventurers, right? Like one of them is kind of the tech guy, one of them is more the fighter, and they have those party dynamics too.
Right. I think that this comes to the end of the podcast, but we would say that this could be the episode number 1 for D&D because we had most of the fun.
Yeah.
I think how time flew, man, because that was like one of the most best podcasts we have over. So thank you, John, for coming over. So
it really did fly, man. I can't believe it'd been an hour. I was like, yeah.
2 questions, okay? Number 1 is, when are we gonna see the Indian guy in D&D? That's number 1,
Yes.
right?
The Indian dog.
Yeah, when is there's gonna be like an Indian accent coming up and John be like, this is how the Indian guy is formed. And number 2 is like, if we wanted to play like people in India have been starting to play D&D, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is like, since it's more like a westernized things, everything culturally it's more inclined towards the West, right? So people have been trying to create it in such a way so it's more easier for the Indian context, like in terms of languages, in terms of how everything things work over here. Right. So, do you think if we wanted to start, or like anyone of the viewers, if they wanted to start like a session, or if they wanted to, start the game, what are the things that they need to play? And, how can they start? Apart from you, obviously, because, if people who are watching, John also has like different sessions where he does, play with the people who register with them. We'll link down in the description where you can, just go over and you can be part of the group, and you can also enjoy the D&D with them. But just give us like a small taste of how people can start, right? And probably how the session goes and what's the basic things they can do.
Teach us something. Teach us your paths.
Yeah, totally. I mean, starting is the hardest part, right? Because like everything's new and you're like, oh snap, what do I do here? What do I do there? I would say, that the DM, like that's like the centerpiece. The DM has to know what they want to happen. And if they don't know what's going on, nobody's going to know what's going on. So like that's the key thing. Like if the 4 of us were all completely new to D&D, we'd have to literally talk to each other and be like, all right, listen, we all want to play. Like, let's fucking do this. But like, who really wants to DM? And we have to talk to each other. And maybe Batra, you'd be like, all right, I don't maybe want to DM, but I'm the most passionate about it and I'm going to make it happen. And I'll do it. I'll start. Taking in other people's games is really helpful. Because then you start to hear, oh, okay, give me a stealth check. Okay, cool. Give me a persuasion check to try to see if this shopkeeper will sell you that for less or whatever. And then the last thing is that, the book, it's right here. The Dragon of Icespire Peak. This is a great one. Like, this is probably the best, starter campaign I've ever seen. But getting an actual preset adventure is super duper helpful. Because what I stream on Twitch is what's called homebrew. It's me taking, our narrative and then creating situations based on the rules that we could play and have fun with. Yeah. But it's not like I'm going from a book anymore. And when you're just starting, having the book, it has the maps, it has a couple characters, it has all the stat blocks in the back so you can look them up. That is very, 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 very helpful because it gives you some framework. And it gives you all the instructions in the beginning where it's like, this is the Dragon of Icespire Peak. There's a young dragon that came down from the mountains and now it's lording over this area. And you're like, okay, cool, I get that. Okay, I could see how that would affect farmers and maybe it would stop trade or, maybe some people want to worship the dragon. They're like, oh my God. Whatever you think is fun. But at least you have the framework of the adventure and of the narrative because that's way less daunting than like building a whole world,
Scratch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And the Indian guy, man, you got to tell about the Indian guy.
Dude, oh my God, I know. Well, see, that's so funny. Yeah. The Indian guy is like waiting in the wings, dude. He's right there. It's just cancel culture in Hollywood, man. Like I need to.
You can give your best Indian expression, Indian accent.
Yeah.
Right. We won't cancel you. I promise you, we won't cancel.
A man in need of an Indian accent is a man that I think would round out the words, right? And it's like, I love Peter Seller. He's an actor.
Russell Peter.
No, well, he's like an old actor from the 80s, but like for some reason he was like obsessed with Bollywood. And so he did a couple movies that like, honestly, I haven't seen them since I was a child. So I don't know. I'm sure they're like not very sensitive. But he plays an Indian American essentially that's like coming in, but he's like just a white guy. And so that is like my introduction, as unfair as it is to the East. So like, I think instead of me bringing in an Indian character, I need to just bring in some Indian player characters. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe.
I think that's the move. I think that is the move.
You would make the Indian guy interesting, man. We're just about to do it. Yeah.
I've also heard DMs that are like, oh, that's not an Indian accent. That's the accent of like Ravenloft, or like, some fantasy, and, it is tough.
You should give it a try again. You should give it a try again. We are listening. We are all ears.
4Cast can gift you a character, and that's Indian. Yeah. That would be nice.
Yeah. That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this? Like when we do our little mini sesh, I'll have an NPC character that is also Indian.
Perfect.
And then we can all like rap, and then you guys can give me that.
Yeah. That would be awesome, man. That would be awesome. That would be super rad.
Episode 2 on.
It really is a beautiful accent, and I spent a good amount of time in London, and it like kind of reminds me of London, because there's just such a strong Indian presence too, right? And Brick Lane and whatnot. And
I mean, the way you tried to say the Indian accent, it sounded like an Assassin's Creed movies or Assassin's Creed games character trying to speak English.
I know.
The Egyptian character.
I think the Indian accent has developed over the time. The way that our parents used to speak and the way that we speak is totally different. So I think you probably need to work upon, how it would turn out when, a newer version of the Indian would speak rather than, be like very, very, very close to the roots and who's, using the local language, right?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of unfair because it's like you guys are all bilingual, minimum trilingual, right? And so it's like
more than trilingual.
It's this lack of experience. You know what I mean? It's you guys coming over and being kind enough to speak English to the English speaker. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate that.
Right.
Cool,
I think.
But
one of the best episodes we had, man, and thank you so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, but if I'm not wrong, Batra speaks 4 languages. If I'm not wrong,
Me, no habla español.
Hindi, English. He speaks Hindi, English, Spanish, Punjabi. 4.
And Hindi.
Punjabi, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Punjabi, yes.
Yeah.
I can speak 4 or 5 as well. So,
Dude, that's
Nice,
being an Indian, it's normal to speak. I don't think there is any Indian who cannot speak at least 3. If you cannot speak at least 3 languages, you're not Indian.
What?
You're not.
No, but that's insane. Like that's such a superpower. Like I can speak Italian and obviously I can
Yeah.
speak English, but it's like there's no. I mean, I think the amount of Americans that are bilingual is probably less than. Well, I guess all the Spanish speakers, but still, it's probably way less than 30-40% of the nation. You know, and I'd say it's probably what like 70, 80, 90% in India. Like
Yeah.
that's bad. You know,
But how many languages do you speak? How many languages do you speak?
I speak 2. Posso parlare italiano. I'm from Napoli. Sì.
Buongiorno.
Do you speak like this? Do you go like, I'm Italiano?
I do a lot of Italian characters to sort of come in, you know, and yeah, and I enjoy, you know, it's nice. But then again, I'll say if I'm in, you know, Italy, if I'm in Rome or whatever, I mean, they're rad and they'll rap, but all the time they'll be like, your accent, it sounds French, and I'm just like, yeah, like. I'm from Texas. You know? So the point is that, like, even the Italians, even whenever I'm really trying to like get in with my people, they're like, no,
Right.
that's not it.
Yeah, actually sound French. I am not joking. I've seen a lot of French YouTubers speaking English. You sound like them.
Yeah, and I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Now,
I don't know why that is.
now we know
Yeah.
it's going to be the dwarf. Now we know it's going to be the dwarf.
It's a party of dwarves. Everybody's in.
Yeah, now Phoenix is the one who's on the radar now. He's going to die first. Yeah, let's
What
go.
did what did I do?
Oh, no, I'm
But-
just kidding. Okay, then. Yeah.
But John,
It's time to go the outro.
yeah, no, I'll
Yeah.
do it. But John, it was too much fun, you know, speaking with you like about Dungeons and Dragons, Stranger Things, about your acting career and everything that you have told us. But thank you for joining, man. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being
Yeah,
part of this
dude.
podcast. And let's see if we can do the second part of this, you know, Dungeon Dragon, and maybe we'll play in the next podcast. So I'll just
I
end
will
this.
make a super mini adventure just so we can get a taste.
Awesome.
Just a little taste.
Haven't you heard the saying? When your podcasters are brown, every other color lecture.
Yes, I have it tattooed actually. It's one of my favorites.
Before going, I promised you, John, I'll teach you some Hindi words. So
Yes,
let's speak it out. Let's say, like we in India we say thank you is as dhanyavad.
We get a shukriya.
Never.
It's more easy for him.
Yeah, shukriya.
Shukriya would be
Yeah.
Hold up.
Shu.
He's like, let me type this up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
like Shu.
Shu.
But it's Dhanirvad.
You know, then that would be difficult.
Yeah. That would be difficult for you. I can
Forget that. Okay.
Go for Shu.
Shu.
Kri.
Say it again.
Kri. Shu. Kri. Kri.
Kri.
Kri. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shukriya.
So is it like Shukri? One was one.
Yeah.
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 Shukriya.
Shukriya.
Shukriya. Okay, Shukriya. Heck yeah. And that
Yeah,
means thank you.
That means thank you. And we can
Yeah,
do so. For example, like me, Phoenix, and Rachel, when they meet, right? The first thing we say, and how are you doing? And so the thing that we use for G, it's bhai. It's like a brother.
You
Bhai.
say,
Okay.
Bhai. Bhai.
G, you say, what's up, bhai?
No. Is that with a P?
It's like a BH.
B. B-H-A-I. Bhai.
Yes, dude. This is what I need. So that's like sup.
No. That's like G. Like you say, what's up, G? We say, what's up, bhai?
Yeah, what you would
G-
say?
My dude. That's like my guy.
It's like brother.
It's my guy.
It's a brother. It's like a brother.
What's up, bye?
Yeah.
So we'll end this podcast by saying, you know, shukriya, bhai, and namaste.
Yes. Hey. Shukriya bye to my buys as well. Thank you for that. Truly. Cheers on that,
Namaste.
man.
Namaste,
Right.
and we'll meet again.